You had the options to this story a long time ago, signed on as a producer and as a star. What was it about his journey that kind of intrigued you?
Well, I loved the book. It doesn't necessarily leap out as the perfect movie. It did take a lot of work to sculpt it into something that would be cinematic, but the material in the book is so rich and unusual, and it deals with, deep issues, and it really attempts to get to the bottom of them in a very kind of, even though it can be so painful. And I also thought that the way that we write our own stories and tell our stories in a particular way to ourselves, and how those stories might not necessarily line up with other people's versions of ourselves, and how those stories can clash. And I thought maybe, I'd like to think I had the inkling then that could provide some really interesting drama.
I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah.
I was well into adulthood before I realized I edited my own memories.
Right.
Like well into adulthood.
Right.
Yeah.
Still doing it too. How do you describe Stephen? I thought of him as kind of like a really successful mess of a man.
You're right, in a way. Stephen is an amazing writer, and his life, he puts so much of his life on display in his work. So there's this weird sort of contradiction where what he's writing about is so kind of crazy, but the way that he's writing it is so well done. So it's like he's harnessing chaos or something.
What is your biggest challenge after James says, hey, you want to direct? And then there's this whole complex kind of story, and it's kind of dark. And what is your biggest challenge to getting it going?
Figuring out how to adapt this very sprawling, introspective book into a film was definitely the biggest challenge. It took me 2 years and dozens of drafts. I took it through the Sundance Labs, the Writer's Lab, and Director's Lab. And kind of each draft was about figuring out what was important to me in this story, and what spoke to me, what I related to. So for me, it's the theme of memory and identity, the idea that we tell ourselves stories in different ways, and so the people with whom we have a shared history would tell that story in a different way than we would, and the idea that our memory shapes our identity. Is what happens to us changes the way that we see ourselves, how we present ourselves to the world, how we perceive who we are. So that was all really rich material, and then it was about figuring out how to tell that in a cinematic way, and how to use these sort of satellite relationships around this person who is very introspective but not always self-aware, and so he sort of needs these people around him to be a mirror, and it takes a conflict within each of these relationships to sort of make this seismic shift and make him realize something fundamental about himself.
Made in Hollywood.
Thanks for watching this interview. As always, don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think in the comment section below. For the next Made in Hollywood interview, click right here. Do it. Click it.